Movie buffs, welcome back to the Movie Bay. This is D, and I got a hot one for you today. So, you guys know about the Tim Talk Talkies Community Challenge that took place a few weeks ago, where it was your top 25 movies from the 90s. It was a great challenge, Tim. Thank you for that. It was awesome. I enjoyed it. But going through my collection, I realized one thing. The 90s is the absolute golden age for my collection. Now, for everybody's collection, it might be a little bit different. The golden age of films in my collection is from the 90s. And I just felt like 25 movies didn't do that generation, that era, that decade enough justice. 50, now you're talking. Now you're talking, you can really showcase that decade in film. So what I'm going to do for you guys is we're going to do my favorite 75 90s movies. They're not in no particular order. They're not ranked. These are just 75 of my favorite 90s movies, okay? They're not ranked in anything, but even though a few of the ones from the Tim Talk Talkies Challenge, they're at the top of the list, but this one is a little bit more scattered. This one, I'm just basically paying homage to such a wonderful decade in film. So without further ado, get yourselves ready. Make sure you got a little bit of time. This is going to be a long one. We going in. Starting with, I'm not going to give years or anything. We're just going to take a quick look at the titles. I'll tell you a little bit about some of them just to keep it moving because we could be here a long time with 75 titles. So without further ado, we're going to start this little thing off with Sleepers. Sleepers, look at that cast. You got Kevin Bacon, Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Jason Patric, Brad Pitt. This is a banging movie where young kids was done dirty, and when they grew up to become adults, they used the system. They turned the system against itself for revenge. Banging movie, Sleepers. Next up, here's a little corny Seagal movie. There's quite a few Seagal movies that came out in the 90s, and I like almost all of the ones that came out in the early 90s, but this is one that I really liked, and I wanted to put this one on the list. It's probably one of my favorites, and it's the one that I quote the most. And this is Steven Seagal's Out for Justice. And it also has a very, very good performance by William Forsythe, who is just criminally underrated. I think I'm going to do a criminally underrated series, starting with William Forsythe and Guy Pearce. I think those two guys, just to name a few, there's quite a few actors out there who are just criminally underrated. And yeah, William Forsythe, he gave a banging performance in this movie, and so did Seagal. I love this cheap, cheesy 90s action movie. Next up, we have Leon the Professional. This was from the challenge, the community challenge. I think the ones that was in the community challenge, I might say it every now and then, so don't get annoyed. Leon the Professional. Next up, we have Cape Fear. This is the remake of Cape Fear. A Time to Kill. Sandra Bullock, Samuel L. Jackson, Matthew McConaughey. That was a great movie. Next up is one, Clockers. Yeah, an all-star cast. Keith David, Delroy Lindo, Mekhi Phife, John Turturro, Harvey Keitel, Isaiah Washington. I mean, just a Spike Lee joint like no other. Clockers was banging, definitely. And this one really didn't get a lot of shine for being a good classic hood movie that it is. The Fugitive, Harrison Ford. This movie was absolutely all that. I can watch this and U.S. Marshals any day of the week. This and U.S. Marshals is just timeless classics. One of Mel Gibson's best movies, Braveheart. This might even be his best performance. I love this movie. Fantastic. Okay, we got Hook. Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman. Yep. Julia Roberts. Fantastic movie. Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes. White Men Can't Jump. From the minds of the Coen brothers. From the minds of the Coen brothers. We're going to go with, for this one, we're going to go with Fargo. And we're going to go with Miller's Crossing. Fargo and Miller's Crossing. This is a wonderful set, though, by the way, just to put it out there. And this set is, in the minds of the Coen brothers, this box set has 4 titles in it. You got Miller's Crossing. You got Raising Arizona. Blood Simple, and Fargo. But we're talking about Fargo and Miller's Crossing, but just to put it out there for that set, if you can get your hands on it, it's a pretty cool box set. Next up, we got Kevin Costner, Dances with Wolves. Phenomenal. Just a really great film. This is good movie watching right here. Next up, we got American History X. Deep Impact. Deep Impact. Kevin Spacey's American Beauty. This case has seen better days. Oh, man. Legendary movie alert. Legendary movie alert. We have Titanic. This is a special collector's edition. We won't go into all of it. Not now. This video is going to be too long. I'm sorry, guys. Really nice. We got The Rock, Ed Harris, Sean Connery, Nicolas Cage. Who else is in here? Jason Todd. I'm not Jason Todd. Tony Todd. Yeah, he had like a small part in here. We have a twofer. We have Shawshank and The Green Mile. Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. Both made the cut. A very underrated movie, in my opinion, but a classic, a banger. Probably the best of its like subgenre prison movies. Probably the best in that genre. Blood In, Blood Out, or Bound by Honor. Probably the best prison movie ever made. I'll say if it's not the best, well, to me it's the best, but I'm just saying for the broad audience, it will definitely make top 3 prison movies of all time. Definitely. Next up, we have King of New York, Christopher Walken, Lawrence Fishburne. Fantastic movie. We have a Quentin Tarantino. You got Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Chris Penn, Steve Buscemi, Lawrence Tierney, and Michael Madsen. Reservoir Dogs, baby. Reservoir Dogs. We have Lawrence Fishburne and Jeff Goldblum in Deep Cover. Deep Cover. Criterion Edition. Next up, we have James Belushi and James Belushi and Michael Caine and Mr. Destiny. This was a movie that came out when I was a young buck. I really do like this movie. This is like a movie that, like, we used to watch movies when I was in school on not every Friday, but on some Fridays. And this is a movie that I saw in school, so I call this like a classroom movie. It's quite a few in my collection that I saw when I was really young in the classroom, and this is one of them, Mr. Destiny, because they would try to put on movies that taught lessons, and this definitely teaches a lesson about being grateful for the life that you have instead of worrying about the life that you could have had. Next up, we have Warren Beatty and Dick Tracy. This movie was pretty good. I really, what I liked about this movie was I liked the job that they did with, even if you watch this movie today, the prosthetics that they did with the makeup, because that makeup was very advanced that they did. It looked great. Warren Beatty, Dick Tracy. Fantastic film. Just a great film. Next up, we have Goodfellas. No need to dive too deep into that one. We also have Kevin Spacey again. We got Stephen Baldwin, Gabriel Byrne, Chaz Palminteri, Kevin Pollak, a great Benicio del Toro, The Usual Suspects. And this was a movie that I was surprised. Look, it didn't make my community challenge list, and it didn't make a lot of lists, and I was really shocked. In going through my collection, a few of these movies here should have made my list, but I didn't really have... I had time. He did give us enough time, but I guess I didn't meditate on that list enough. But this is one that should have made that list. No doubt about it. The Usual Suspects. Banging movie. Next up, we have The Untouchables. Fantastic gangster movie with a great cast. Independence Day, the movie that gave Will Smith his nickname, Mr. Summer Blockbuster Man. Friday, one hell of a comedy. How do you get fired on your day off? Here's one that, this made a lot of people's list for top 90s movie, Sylvester Stallone, Harvey Keitel. Harvey Keitel he was running the 90s, I'm trying to tell you. Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, all these guys was just, the 90s was their house, straight up. And Harvey Keitel, a lot of people don't know how deep this man, his filmography, how big it is. But Harvey Keitel was running the boards from man, he'd been running the boards for a while. Not as of late, but the 90s, he definitely was running the boards. Copland. Banging movie. Did not make my list. And with only 25 movies to pick, this wouldn't have made my list. But on a bigger list, yeah, Copland is in here, for sure. Next up, we have Needful Things with Ed Harris, Bonnie Bedelia, and Max von Sydow. A great movie, too. A little cheesy now when you watch it, but it's still very entertaining. And the ideal of the movie, like the concept of this movie, is really, really good. Menace to Society, the number one, the quintessential hood movie of all times. Is there hood movies probably a little bit more violent and gritty? I don't know, because this was up there. It's always going to be a debate between this and Boys in the Hood. Me personally, I'm going with Menace, and I'll go with Menace for a couple of scenes real quick. That one interrogation scene with Bill Duke, you know you don't up right. You know. It's too many scenes in here that's just highly quotable, and you just can talk about it all day. Just some of the scenes in this movie was just crazy. Not to say Boys in the Hood didn't have good scenes, but Menace is a deep one. Tombstone. You got a banging cast in here. I know this was a Kurt Russell vehicle, but let's go ahead and just put the truth on the table. This was a Val Kilmer vehicle for real, for real. Val Kilmer was the one who held this bad boy together. Val Kilmer took this movie and made it better than the Wyatt Earp movie with Kevin Costner. If not for Val Kilmer, Wyatt Earp would have been the better movie. Let me know what you think in the comment section. This was a banging movie, but let's be real, okay? Val Kilmer made this movie. It wasn't really his movie. Doc Holliday is important to that story, but Doc Holliday, Val Kilmer made this movie for real, for real. Let me know if you disagree, if you think that it was because the Wyatt Earp movie was really good. Kevin Costner did a great job in that, but I mean, man, Val Kilmer, he killed it in that. Robert De Niro in A Bronx Tale. Here's one that definitely wouldn't have made my top 20, wouldn't make top 25, but again, you brought that list up, and I'm putting this in here. Tommy Lee Jones and Susan Sarandon. Love Susan Sarandon. She got some good stuff out there. The Client. This movie right here. This is definitely going to go on an underrated movies list. I might have did this on the underrated. I'm not sure, but this was a banger. John Woo. Directed, John Woo is all about that gun. Hard Boiled. With Chow Yun Fat. Banging ass movie. Tons of gunplay. This movie is like gun porn almost. This is crazy. If you never seen this or heard of this, you need to check this one out. Hard Boiled. Young Guns 2. Speed. This made a lot of people's top 25 lists. I like Speed, but it's definitely not my top 25. But I do like Speed. Top 50 for sure. House Party. Tremors. Scent of a Woman. I love this movie. It's a fantastic movie and a great watch. A Few Good Men. Look at that cast. Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore, Tom Cruise, Kevin Bacon. Man. Tony Todd's Candyman. This did make my list for the top 25. Rosewood, John Voight, Ving Rhames, Don Cheadle, Esther Roll. Fantastic film. It's very sad, very emotional movie. Man, very emotional. John Travolta and Nicolas Cage in Face Off. Bruce Willis, The Sixth Sense. Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, Fight Club. Now, this one, I kicked myself in the ass a couple of times. I ain't gonna lie. I put boot to ass. I put my own boot to my own ass for not putting this in my top 25. I meant to, because this is one of my favorite movies in my collection. It's absolutely hands down. This is like in my top 25 in my entire collection. It might even be top 20. And this is Denzel Washington, Gene Hackman, and Crimson Tide. Man, I love this movie right here. And the fact that I did that list and this wasn't on it, I just missed it. I just missed it. This is one that I missed. Legit missed it. And I was like, really like, wow, how can I not put Crimson Tide on my list? I love this movie. It's one of my favorites. Forrest Gump. This is one that should have made the list. Now, I purposely didn't do this one. I didn't forget this one like I did Crimson Tide. I didn't put it on, but I should have. This is a really good movie to me right here. And this is Armageddon. This is a special movie for me, too, because when me and my wife met when we was dating, we saw this. This was one of the first movies that we saw. One of the first few movies that we saw when we started dating. So I really like this movie. It brings back a lot of memories when I watch it. Next up, we got Hoodlum, all-star cast. Andy Garcia, Lawrence Fishburne, Tim Roth, Vanessa Williams, Cicely Tyson, Danny Aiello. The cast in here is sickening. It's just stupid. Wait, no, Danny Aiello wasn't in this. Danny Aiello was in freaking Harlem Nights. My bad. Yeah, so no Danny Aiello. Next up is another movie. Now, this movie is something because this is another movie that my wife loves. She used to watch, years ago, I used to work the overnight shift, and she'd be home. And when I come in a lot of times, she'd be up doing her thing, watching this. Jerry Maguire. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Jerry Maguire. I watched it enough times. You know, being married to her, I watched it sure as hell watching enough. But this was her favorite movie. This and Shawshank, I think if I had these on VHS, she would have wore the damn tapes out. But yeah, Jerry Maguire, this is a great movie. Cuba Gooding Jr. and Tom Cruise gave wonderful performances in this movie. And this is a movie that's just seemed like a forgotten gem. Next up, Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore, Whoopi Goldberg, Ghost. Fantastic film. We moving on down. We got one stack left, guys. Pulp Fiction. No 90s list is complete without Pulp Fiction. Did I have Pulp Fiction on my list? I think I did. Pulp Fiction. And we got a couple of Star Trek movies to talk about. We have First Contact and we have The Undiscovered Country. This is the Stardate collection. It has all the original Star Trek movies and the Next Generation Trek movies. Next up, we have the original Scream. This is the Scream 3-pack, the first three. But then we're talking about the very first Scream movie. Next up, we're talking about Blade, the original Blade. Bad Boys, the original Bad Boys. Die Hard with a Vengeance. So that's Die Hard 3. Die Hard with a Vengeance. Misery. Man, Misery. Whew. James Caan, Kathy Bates. It's like a two-man. It's a two-man or two-person movie, should I say? Banging movie. Banging. Next up, we have Batman Returns. I love Batman Returns. I liked. For the most part, I ain't gonna lie, I dug the first three. Batman and Robin, that was something that shouldn't have never happened. But Batman Forever was all right. A lot of people was taking a dump on Batman Forever. Batman Forever was all right. So we're talking about Batman Returns. Carlito's Way, Al Pacino, Sean Penn, John Leguizamo. Man, this movie was banging right here. Casino, Robert De Niro, Sharon Stone, Joe Pesci, and a host of others. One of my favorite thrillers in my entire collection. This is, as far as thrillers go, this is my number 2 thriller. Number 2, Michael Douglas, The Game. Now, y'all know Seven is my favorite movie and my favorite thriller in my entire collection. The Game is my number 2 thriller. Next up, we have Saving Private Ryan. No 90s list is complete without Saving Private Ryan. We're getting into the good ones here. Jurassic Park. Although Jurassic Park wasn't one of my favorite movies from the 90s, what I will always put this high on the list because of what it brought to the table. You know what I'm saying? They was great movies for the most part. But I pay a lot of homage to Jurassic Park for just what it did and how they pulled it off. It was amazing. And when I went to the theaters to see this when it first came out when I was very young, and not very young, but young. And everybody in the movie theater was just like blown away. So although Jurassic Park isn't one of my favorite franchises, it's a well-respected franchise. I appreciate what it brought to the table. You know what I mean? Okay, we already did that one. Next up, we got Heat. I mean, probably, like I said before, if it's not the best heist standpoint from a technical standpoint, it's definitely the best heist movie from a shootout standpoint. Malcolm X, Denzel Washington gave a performance of a lifetime, and that's saying something because he gave a lot of performances of a lifetime. Malcolm X. Okay, we're talking about the original Matrix. The original Matrix. The Matrix is, again, a special effects powerhouse. It pioneered a lot of special effects that's still in use today. My favorite Western in my collection, I have a lot. We have Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman. Man, this movie right here. Next up, we have T2 Judgment Day. Definitely, you're not getting off the hook with a 90s list without this. That's just not going to happen. Unless you're just purposely trying to exclude mainstream titles. I've seen some lists like that too and there's nothing wrong with that, where some people did lists where they purposely didn't include mainstream titles. And that's fine. I mean, if you want to do a list like that, that's fine. But let's face it, some mainstream titles are just unavoidable. Last but not least, y'all know what it is. Dun, dun, dun. 7. Morgan Freeman, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Brad Pitt. Crazy movie. My favorite movie. This is my go-to. I can watch this anytime, any day. I love it. I love everything about this movie. To me, it is the perfect movie. There's nothing about this movie I don't like. I like the way it was set up. I like the way it ended. This is the perfect movie to me. So yeah, 7. So guys, what do you think? We just did 75 of my top 90s movies. Now, we know we did the 25 community challenge. Tim, again, I got to say, brother, thank you so much for your challenge. Looking forward to the next one, but I just felt like 25 just wasn't enough, Tim. I felt like such a golden age of film deserved its proper. And 50, I was going to do 50, but I realized I'm still leaving stuff out. So I said, let's take it up a notch. And to be honest with you guys, I could have did 100. But 75, I think this is good. Next year, we always probably do these kind of lists every year because our collections grow and our collections change. So next year, we might do 100 films for the 90s. But for this year, this is my top 75 90s films in no particular order. Thank you for watching. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.